Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we're going to be doing a deep dive.
Ooh, a deep dive.
I like that. Into a video called 5 Signs She's Not Into You.
Okay.
And this is a topic, we've all been there where you're
Yeah.
kind of like, is she into me? Is she not?
Right.
So we're going to be breaking down those signs, hopefully giving you some tools for your dating tool belt.
Absolutely. Like a decoder ring for
Yes.
deciphering those signals.
Yeah, for sure.
That can be really confusing sometimes.
Yes, definitely. So the first sign that the video talks about is lack of communication. And I think this is something we can all relate to. Have you ever, felt like you're carrying the whole conversation?
Oh, yeah. I mean, communication is the foundation of any relationship, romantic or otherwise. And if you're putting in all the effort, that's a sign to pay attention to.
Yeah. It's like you're always the one initiating,
Yeah.
reaching out,
Yeah.
asking questions.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's not just about the frequency, but the quality of that communication, too.
Yeah.
Like, are you getting those short one-word responses?
Yep. Cool. Okay.
Yeah. It's like pulling teeth to get a decent conversation going.
Yeah, and sometimes the lack of communication is a little more subtle. Like, she's not completely ignoring you.
Right.
But it takes her, hours or even days to respond to your text.
Oh, yeah. The classic delayed response.
Yeah, delayed
to-
reply. Yeah, I'm so busy, or my phone died.
Right.
I was in a meeting.
But, honestly, if someone's really interested, they're going to make the effort. Even if it's just to send a quick message saying, hey, I'll get back to you later.
Yeah. I think about how I act, when I'm interested in someone. And yeah, you just make the time.
Exactly. When you're excited about someone, they're on your mind. You want to connect. So if you're constantly waiting around for her to respond, it's worth asking yourself, is she making you a priority?
Yeah, for sure. Like, are you a priority to her, or are you just an option?
Right. And another thing to watch out for is when she only reaches out when she needs something.
Oh, yeah. Like, she needs a favor.
Oh.
Or, like, a shoulder to cry on. And then she disappears again.
Exactly. It's like she's only there when it's convenient for her.
When it's transactional.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, so we've talked about that lack of communication, the one-sided conversations, delayed replies. Now let's move on to sign number 2, which is flaking out. And again, I think we can all relate to this. You're excited about plans, you've cleared your schedule, and then bam, she cancels last minute.
It's the worst. It's like a punch to the gut.
It is. It really is. Now, our source does say that, emergencies happen, things come up.
Of course.
But if it's a pattern, if she's consistently flaking on you, it's a sign that she might not be respecting your time.
Exactly. Or your feelings.
Mhm.
Think about it. If someone's genuinely excited to see you, they'll make the effort to be there.
Yeah. So it's not about overanalyzing every single cancellation, but it's like noticing that pattern,
Exactly. Like,
Yeah.
is she generally reliable, or is this a recurring theme?
Yeah. And you know what? Our source also pointed out that sometimes flaking can be a way to avoid direct rejection.
Oh, interesting.
Maybe she doesn't want to hurt your feelings or have that uncomfortable conversation, so
Wow.
she just flakes.
Yeah, it's like an avoidance tactic.
It is. So if you find yourself constantly making excuses for her or trying to convince yourself it's not a big deal, it might be time to step back and think, okay, am I settling for crumbs of attention here?
Right. You deserve to be with someone who makes you feel like a priority, not a backup plan.
Absolutely. Okay, so we've talked about the lack of communication and flaking out. Now let's move on to sign number 3, which gets a little bit more, I guess, nuanced.
Yeah.
And that's a lack of physical touch. And I want to be clear here. We're
Yeah.
not talking about, grand romantic gestures or anything inappropriate.
Right.
But those small, everyday moments of connection.
Exactly. It's about those subtle cues that can reveal a lot about someone's level of comfort and attraction. Like, does she brush your arm when she laughs? Does she lean in when you're talking?
Does she, give you a warm hug when you see each other? Those kinds of things.
Right. And again, we're talking about consensual and appropriate touch here. But if you notice that she's consistently avoiding physical contact or seems uncomfortable with any kind of closeness, that's something to pay attention to.
Yeah. It's like there's this invisible wall between you, even when you're physically close.
Yeah. And while there could be other reasons for this, like past experiences or personal boundaries, it's still important to consider what that lack of physical connection might be telling you, especially when it's combined with those other signs we've talked about.
Yeah, exactly. So if you're getting those vibes that she's not comfortable with physical touch, even in those small ways,
Right.
it's worth, thinking about what that might be saying about her feelings.
Absolutely. It's all about piecing together the puzzle.
Yeah, and, it kind of leads us to our next sign, which is that dreaded word, friend.
Oh, friend. That one can sting a little bit.
It can, especially if you've been hoping for something more.
Yeah, and it's a classic way of letting someone down gently. But it can still be pretty disheartening.
Yeah, for sure. And our source points out that there are some specific phrases, that kind of solidify that friend role.
Like, you're like a brother to me, or I feel so comfortable talking to you about anything.
I can tell you anything.
Exactly. And while those qualities are great for a friendship, they're not necessarily the foundation for a romantic connection.
Exactly. And I think it's also important to acknowledge that, escaping the friend zone isn't always easy or successful.
It's tough. It happens.
Yeah.
But it's rare.
Yeah, and it often requires like a huge shift in perception.
Yeah.
And even then, there's no guarantee.
Right. And honestly, sometimes it's just not worth the emotional investment. If she's not feeling it romantically, it's better to accept that and move on.
It's so easy to get caught up in the hope that, like, maybe she'll change her mind, or she'll suddenly realize what she's missing.
I know. I've been there.
But holding on to that false hope, can prevent you from finding someone who truly sees you as a potential partner and not just a friend.
Absolutely. It's all about recognizing your worth and not settling for less than you deserve.
I like that. And that brings us to our fifth and final sign,
Okay.
which can be pretty tough to stomach.
What's that?
And that is that she's talking about other guys.
Ooh, yeah. That one can sting.
It can. It can feel like a punch in the gut, especially if you've been putting in effort to pursue her,
Yeah, imagine you're planning dates, having meaningful conversations, and then she casually mentions how cute she thinks her coworker is.
He's so funny.
Exactly.
We went to this concert.
Like, hello, I'm right here.
Yeah, exactly. And, while she might just be trying to be friendly or make conversation, if this becomes a pattern, it's a sign that she's not really seeing you as a romantic prospect.
Right. Because if she were interested, she'd be focused on getting to know you, not on exploring other options.
Right. Our source also pointed out that it's not just about talking about guys she's currently interested in, but also about constantly bringing up her ex.
Oh, yeah, the X factor. What's that all about?
Well, it can indicate that she's not fully over her past relationship.
Okay.
And might not be emotionally available for a new one, which is totally understandable. It takes time to heal and move on.
It does.
Right.
But if she's constantly dwelling on the past or using you as a sounding board for her unresolved relationship issues,
Yeah.
that's a red flag.
It is a red flag.
You don't want to be her rebound or her therapist.
No. You deserve to be with someone who's ready to move forward with you, not someone who's stuck in the past.
Exactly. And it's so easy to get caught up in the idea of like winning her over or proving yourself to be a better option than these other guys.
Oh, I'm better than him.
Right. But that's a recipe for disaster.
It is.
You don't want to be
Right.
competing for someone's attention.
No, you don't. You deserve to be with someone who chooses you enthusiastically, without hesitation, and without the need for constant validation.
I love that. Choose me.
Yes. Choose me. So if you notice this pattern of her talking about other guys,
Wow.
whether it's casual flirting, mentioning crushes, or constantly bringing up her ex, it's definitely a sign to pay attention to. It might be her way of subconsciously communicating that she's just not seeing you in a romantic light.
Yeah, and remember, healthy relationships are built on mutual respect, open communication, and a genuine desire to connect. If you're not feeling that from her, it's okay to walk away and find someone who does.
Okay, so we've unpacked those 5 signs that she might not be reciprocating your feelings. But beyond just recognizing the signs, why is it so important to actually pay attention to them and, take them seriously?
Well, it really boils down to one thing: self-respect.
Yeah, self-respect.
Self-respect, yeah. It's so important.
So important.
And I think sometimes, like in the dating world, it's easy to kind of like lose sight of that.
It is, especially when you have those rose-colored glasses on.
Yeah, you just like really want to like make things work.
Right.
But yeah, our source emphasizes like really recognizing your worth.
Absolutely. And not settling for less than you deserve.
Yeah, absolutely. And so how do we how does our listener start to cultivate that self-respect? Because it's easy to say, know your worth, but it's a lot harder to actually put that into practice.
Well, I think it starts with being honest with yourself about what you're seeing, about what you're feeling. Don't ignore those red flags. Don't rationalize her behavior.
Yeah.
Trust your gut.
Trust your gut. If something feels off, It probably is.
And I think sometimes, we get so caught up in wanting to be liked
Oh, yeah.
or wanting things to work out
Right.
that we start making excuses for behavior that, honestly, we wouldn't tolerate from a friend or a family member.
We lower our standards because we're afraid of being alone.
Yeah, exactly. Well, she's just busy, or she's going through a lot right now.
But the reality is, if someone's truly interested, they're going to make the effort.
They will.
No excuses.
Yeah, and I think it's so important, if you find yourself, making those excuses for her behavior, or convincing yourself that it's not a big deal, just take a step back.
Yeah.
And be like, okay, would I accept this behavior from someone who really values and respects me?
That's a great question to ask yourself.
Yeah.
Because if the answer is no,
Yeah.
it might be time to move on.
It is.
It's okay to walk away from a situation that's no longer serving you. You're not obligated to stay in a dynamic where you don't feel respected or where your feelings aren't reciprocated.
And I think walking away can be hard, especially when you have feelings for someone.
It is. It's not easy.
But it's an act of self-love. It's an act of self-respect.
It is.
And you're opening yourself up to, the possibility of something so much better.
You are. Because it frees you up to find someone who is truly a match for you, someone who's excited to connect, who communicates openly and honestly, and who values you for who you are.
And I think, walking away doesn't mean that you're giving up on love or closing yourself off to future possibilities.
Not at all.
It's about prioritizing your well-being.
Right.
And setting those boundaries, healthy boundaries.
Yes. It's a powerful message to send to yourself and to the universe that I'm worthy of love, respect, and reciprocation.
Yes. Okay, so we've talked about recognizing those signs and the importance of self-respect, but what about the fear of rejection? That can be a huge obstacle for a lot of people, even when they know that they deserve better.
It's a very human fear.
Yeah.
It's totally natural to feel apprehensive about putting yourself out there.
Oh, yeah.
And you know what? Rejection is a part of life. We all experience it at some point, whether it's at dating or friendships, job applications.
Yeah.
It's gonna happen.
It is inevitable, pretty much.
It is.
Yeah.
But it's about reframing our perspective on it. Instead of seeing rejection as a personal failure,
Yeah.
view it as an opportunity for growth and learning.
Yeah, because I think our source also emphasizes that, rejection isn't always a reflection of your worthiness.
Right.
It could just be, incompatibility.
Yeah.
You're just not a good match.
Exactly. It doesn't mean there's anything wrong with you. It just means that you weren't a good fit for that particular person.
And that's okay. It's better to know that sooner rather than later.
Absolutely.
So you can move on and find someone who is. I always think about rejection as trying on clothes.
Oh, I like that.
Not every outfit is going to look good on you. That's so true.
And that's not a reflection of your body or your sense of style or anything. It's just about finding the right fit.
I love that analogy.
Yeah. And, sometimes rejection can be a blessing in disguise. It can redirect you to a path that is ultimately more fulfilling for you.
Right. It's like when one door closes, another one opens.
Exactly. So instead of letting fear kind of paralyze you,
Right.
embrace the possibility of rejection as just a natural part of the process.
And remember, every no gets you closer to a yes with someone who truly appreciates and values you.
Ooh, I love that. Okay, so we've talked about the signs, self-respect, rejection. What about that whole concept of the friend zone? It's a term that gets thrown around a lot.
It does.
But what does it actually mean? How do you define that?
Well, the friend zone is basically that ambiguous space where you have feelings for someone, but they only see you as a friend.
Right. And it can be such a tricky separation to navigate. It is.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're trying to balance those feelings with their feelings and respect their boundaries, while also hoping that maybe, just maybe, they'll see you in a different light.
Yeah. And our source does say, escaping the friend zone is rarely easy or successful.
It's tough.
Yeah.
It's not impossible, but it's rare.
It is?
It often requires a huge shift in perception.
Yeah.
And even then, there's no guarantee it will work.
No, there's not. Because sometimes people are just more comfortable
Right.
in that platonic role,
Yeah.
And that's something you gotta respect.
Absolutely.
I think it's important to be honest with yourself about, your motivations for wanting to escape the friend zone. Are you truly, in love with this person? Or are you, in love with the idea of them? Or the potential of what it could be?
That's a good question to ask yourself.
Yeah.
Because sometimes we get so caught up in the chase or the challenge of winning someone over that we forget to consider whether they're actually a good fit for us.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's also important to consider, like, what's the impact on the friendship? You
Yeah.
know, if you do try to, like, make a move,
Because you could risk losing that friendship
you could.
if things don't work out romantically.
Right, right. And again, it's not about, like, trying to manipulate someone or, like, pressure them into seeing you differently.
Absolutely not.
It's about respecting their feelings, their boundaries. And if they're not interested romantically, it's okay to move on.
It is.
Maybe down the road that friendship could evolve into something more, but trying to force it or rush the process is rarely a recipe for success.
Exactly.
Okay. So we've talked about the friend zone. Let's talk about, like, finding the right person. Compatibility. Like, what are some things that we should be looking for when we're trying to determine, like, is this person a good match for me? Beyond just, like, physical attraction or, like, shared interests. What else is there?
Well, compatibility goes so much deeper than surface level stuff.
Yeah.
Like, it's about shared values,
Yeah.
similar life goals, that sense of really getting each other on a deeper level.
Yeah.
That emotional connection.
Yeah, and, like, our source says that it's important to, like, feel comfortable being yourself around that person.
Absolutely.
Like, that sense of ease and authenticity, that's huge.
It is.
You shouldn't have to pretend to be someone you're not or, like, suppress parts of yourself just to please someone else.
A good partner will love you for who you are, quirks and all.
Yeah, quirks and all, they'll celebrate your individuality
Absolutely.
and they'll encourage you to, like, grow and evolve.
Right.
But, like, as your authentic self.
Right, exactly.
And I think it's also important to, like, have that open and honest communication from the start, being able to talk about your feelings, your
Yeah.
needs, your expectations.
Communication is key
It is.
in any relationship.
Yeah, exactly. You want to feel like you can be vulnerable with each other, that you can share, like, your hopes and dreams, your fears, your insecurities
Right.
without, like, judgment or fear of rejection.
Exactly. And if you find yourself constantly walking on eggshells
Yeah.
or feeling like you can't be your true self around someone,
Right.
that's a sign that the compatibility might not be there.
It might not be there.
It might be a sign to reevaluate things.
It is.
Yeah.
Okay. So we've covered, like, a lot of ground today. Recognizing those signs, self-respect, rejection, the friend zone, compatibility. What are, like, as we're kind of wrapping up and heading into our last part here, what are some key takeaways that you want to leave our listener with?
Well, I think the biggest takeaway is just this. You deserve to be with someone who reciprocates your feelings and treats you with respect. Don't settle for anything less.
Okay, we're back, ready to wrap up this deep dive into the 5 signs she's just not that into you. And we've talked about so much, right? Communication patterns, the dreaded friend zone, self-respect, respecting your time.
Recognizing those red flags.
Yes, recognizing those red flags.
Not settling.
Yeah.
For less than you deserve.
Not settling, yeah.
All those pieces.
It is like, it's like a puzzle, right?
Yeah.
But even when we have all those pieces right in front of us, sometimes it can be hard to see the bigger picture.
I know, it's so true.
Yeah.
We can get so fixated on one specific interaction.
Yeah.
Like a sweet text message.
Yeah.
Or a flirty comment, and we completely ignore weeks of inconsistent behavior.
It's like we want to believe, like, in our minds that
We do.
that things are better than they actually are.
Right.
And we're just looking for those
Yeah.
little glimmers of hope,
Those,
crumbs.
right?
Yeah.
And we ignore the giant red flags waving in our faces.
We do. So I think that's where remembering those patterns is so important. It's not about over-analyzing every single text or every interaction,
Right.
but it's like stepping back and
Yeah.
looking at the overall trend. What's the pattern here?
What's the bigger picture?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So if those 5 signs that we've talked about, that lack of communication, the flakiness, avoiding physical touch, the friend label, talking about other guys, if those keep popping up, it might be time to be honest with yourself.
It's tough,
Yeah.
but it's the key to moving forward.
It is.
Finding a relationship that truly fulfills you.
And our source says that, when taken together, these 5 signs, it really paints a clear picture
It does.
of, what her level of interest really is.
Yeah, it's rarely just one isolated incident.
Right, exactly. It's like if you go to the doctor,
Right.
and you have a headache, they're going to ask about other symptoms to kind of figure out what's going on, right?
Exactly.
So it's the same thing with dating. Like, one sign in isolation
Yeah,
might not mean much,
it might not.
but if you're seeing several of these, it can be a pretty clear indicator that, maybe she's just not that into you.
And remember, we're not being pessimistic here.
Yeah.
We're not assuming the worst. We're just being realistic about what's in front of us.
Yeah, exactly.
And as difficult as it can be to accept, sometimes that false hope, holding on to that,
Yeah.
is the biggest obstacle to actually finding someone
It is.
who truly reciprocates your feelings.
Yeah. So, what advice would you give to someone who's listening to this and, they're recognizing these signs in their own dating life, but they're having a hard time letting go?
First and foremost, I would say, acknowledge your feelings. It's okay to feel hurt,
Yeah.
disappointed, even rejected.
Yeah.
Allow yourself to process those emotions. Don't try to suppress them.
And I think it's easy to be like, okay, just get over it and move on.
Right.
But sometimes we need to, sit with those feelings.
Yeah, absolutely.
For a bit,
Give yourself permission to feel those things.
Yeah.
Because they're valid.
They are.
Talk to a trusted friend or family member.
Yeah.
Journal.
Yeah.
Express yourself creatively.
Yeah. Our source says, healing takes time.
It does. There's no rush.
There's no rush. Don't rush the process.
No.
Because it can actually make it harder to, move on in a healthy way.
Exactly. So give yourself that time.
Yeah.
And then once you've processed those emotions, it's time to shift your focus
Yeah.
toward the future.
Yes. Toward the future. Time to, remember all those amazing things that you
Yeah.
bring to the table.
Exactly.
All those qualities.
Think about your passions, your goals,
Yeah.
the things that make you excited about life.
Yeah.
Invest in yourself, invest in your growth.
Yeah. And our source also says, remember your self-worth.
Yes, a self
You deserve to be with someone
You do.
who sees your value, who treats you with respect.
And that person is out there. Don't let a few setbacks or heartbreaks dim your light.
I love that. Okay, so as we're wrapping up this deep dive,
Yeah.
let's leave our listener with a final thought-provoking question to ponder.
Ooh, I like it.
Okay, here we go. So, if you could go back in time, knowing what you know now
Okay.
about these 5 signs,
Yeah.
what choices would you have made differently in your past dating experiences?
Ooh, that's a good one.
Right.
Yeah, food for thought.
Yeah, food for thought. And I think that encourages us to, learn from our past and make those more empowered choices in the future.
It does.
And ultimately, I think that's what this whole deep dive is about.
It is.
Helping you navigate the dating world with more awareness, self-respect, and a deeper understanding of what you truly deserve.
Exactly. Dating can be tough, but
It can be.
we're here to help you through it.
We are.
One deep dive at a time.
One deep dive at a time. So thanks for joining us today. Until next time, keep diving deep. And remember, you are worthy of a love that sets your soul on fire.
You are.